Welcome to the fifth in our series of webinars with the Entrepreneur Center at the Mississippi Development Authority. Many of you are here today as part of the pilot entrepreneur training program that is currently underway in 19 counties throughout Mississippi. Some of you are joining us because you have an interest in growing your business, or perhaps you're interested in starting a new business in Mississippi. We want you to feel welcome, and we're glad that you took the time to join us. At the end of today's webinar, you will find contact information on the screen that will help you to get more information about how the Entrepreneur Center at the Mississippi Development Authority can assist you in making your business more successful. As a reminder, if you're viewing this webinar live, you may type your questions in the box on the lower corner of your screen at any time during the webinar, beginning now. We will attempt to answer as many questions as time permits. However, all questions will be answered and posted on our website. Our topic today is international trade, and joining us is Ms. Vicki Waters. Vicki is a good friend, and we've worked together on a lot of projects. Vicki is the International Trade Specialist to Canada for the Global Business Division of the Mississippi Development Authority. She works throughout the state of Mississippi and throughout the world. With us, she currently is organizing and facilitating business-to-business horizontal outbound trade missions throughout the world that include places like Edmonton, Calgary, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Montreal and Quebec City, Quebec, Toronto and Ottawa in Canada, Vancouver, British Columbia, and many more. In 2010, Vicki led matchmaking team efforts for 6 southeastern United States and 7 Canadian provinces, which successfully resulted in approximately 400 one-on-one business-to-business meetings. Vicki holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's of business administration. Gosh, Vicki, we're delighted that you're here. So let me ask you a question. It's often said that the world is getting to be a smaller place. Of course, we realize the world isn't actually shrinking, but what do we mean by that? How is the world becoming even smaller?
Thank you, John. Good morning. Well, international trade is a significant method for companies to increase bottom line and its growth. With the increase in U.S. trade agreements with other countries, it is now easier for companies to have access to international markets. There is a significant demand for U.S. products, which gives a competitive advantage because the products are known throughout the world for high quality, innovative goods and services, customer services, and actually sound business practices. According to the U.S. Commercial Service, more than 70% of the world's purchasing power is located outside of the United States. Exporting has proven to be profitable. On an average, sales grow faster, more jobs are created, and employees earn more than in non-exporting firms. Over 12 million jobs are supported by U.S. exports. 1 out of every 5 manufacturing jobs and 1 out of 3 every agriculture job are supported by U.S. exports. 1 direct job equates to 2 supporting jobs. Companies that export have an easier time riding out fluctuations in the U.S. economy and are more likely to stay in business. According to the study published by the Institute of International Economists, U.S. companies that export not only grow faster, but are nearly 8.5% less likely to go out of business than non-exporting companies. Some company benefits for companies that are exporting include lower failure rates, higher productivity and growth. They are more competitive, more market share, more pay. Who can use more pay? On an average, U.S. workers that work for companies that are exporting earn 15% more in wages, 33% more in benefits. They have job stability. Everybody's concerned about jobs these days. So if you are concerned, go and find a company that is exporting. You have the likelihood of more job stability. Higher skill levels. Our state of Mississippi has also realized positive economic benefits from international trade and exporting. In 2009, Mississippi exports were over $6 billion and around 50,000 jobs were attributed to exports. Mississippi exports to the world in 2010. What I decided to do is share with you the 10 top commodities that Mississippi exported around the world. Mineral fuel and oil came in about $2 billion, which is a 50% increase over 2009. And then we had electrical machinery, which followed with $827 million, tanning, dye, paint, and putty. And then you see the numbers as they go down the list, and those are the commodities that were exported. Overall, Mississippi exports for 2010 came to $8.2 billion, which was a 30% increase to the world. Mississippi's top export destinations include Canada. Historically, ever since records have been recorded, Canada has been the #1 export market for the state of Mississippi. Last year, we exported $1.2 billion worth of merchandise to Canada. Our second top export destination is Mexico. We sent $1.1 billion to Mexico. Mexico realized an almost 84% increase over the previous year. Mississippi exports to the world. As just mentioned, in last year, 2010, we sent $8.2 billion around the world. In 2009, we did $6.3 billion. And as you can see, going backwards, we did it for a 5-year span. In 2008, it was $7.3 billion. So even with the fluctuations in the economy, you can see that Mississippi is realizing the benefits of doing international trade and export. This is Mississippi exports to the world. You can see that we have a 15% amount of exports that went to the world, Asia 20%, and the Middle East, and you can see the percentages around the pie shape that shows the percentages of how Mississippi played a role and was a player in exporting. Now, some of the challenges to exporting that we as international trade specialists have realized is one of the primary reasons companies do not export is fear of the unknown. A lot of times when you think of exporting, it puts up this, how am I going to get my product there? What is it going to cost me? A lot of questions that companies come up with, and it's really a fear. That's why we are here. We'll walk you through the process because we want our companies to play a role in the exporting. Another challenge, a barrier to exporting is documentation. Determining the right international documents is important to successful export shipment. Accurate documentation is one of the most important elements in international shipping and customs clearance. Properly completed documentation will help your shipment reach its international destination on time and reduce the risk of being delayed in customs. Contents of your shipment will also affect the documentation that is required, as well as the country that you are doing business with. Some of the things that a good description that can cause some delays in documentation is sometimes we fail to put what is the commodity that's being exported, how many there are, where are they from, what is the intended use, providing the proper classification of your product, the commercial invoice, the certificate of origin. Those are all terms and types of documentations that are common to exporting. Another area that's considered a challenge is marketing. Marketing to new international markets can be a challenge. For instance, in Canada, selling to Canada is similar to the U.S. However, there are differences, and it comes in your documentation. As opposed to my colleague Rose, where she says there are going to be some challenges, and you need to find out how you gonna market to a new country. Some countries require that you have representation locally. Some countries do not. In many ways, selling your product has its benefits if you use our resources. We can show you what is the best way to better position your product in a particular country. One of the things that we stress to new to export companies is you need to know what practices of marketing your product works best. Who are your competitors? What is your niche? What is the competitive advantage? How can you saturate the market? Those are all areas that we can assist you with. Payment and finances. Of course, you want to get paid for your product or service that you're exporting. With the increase in the improvements in this area, we can help you find the right payment and financing tools that you can use in moving your product internationally. Now, this is one that it seems simple, but it's a huge challenge to exporting. The commitment of time and resources. A lot of times, companies may be interested in doing business internationally, but they do not want to commit the time or the resources. You have to budget that in. You have to have a decision maker that can play the role and make the decisions on behalf of the company of doing business. And so just as a highlight, I hope that this information that I've highlighted is something that we can, for companies that may be interested or in doing exporting or interested in learning how to export, come to the Mississippi Development Authority. There are several of us that are international trade specialists, and that's what we do. We help companies and advise them on the best way to export their product. John?
Thanks, Vicki. It's true that it's nice to know with so many challenges out there that there is a team that is willing and able, experienced enough to help you with all of those challenges that are there. Here's a poll that is coming up on your screen now, and we would like to ask you, as you're listening in today, to take just a second and answer this poll. The poll question is this: have you thought about selling your product or service in another country? The two answers that are available to you are yes or no. Take just a second and please answer that question. And while you're answering, we're going to move on to listen to another good friend of mine, Rose Box. Rose is the Senior International Trade Specialist for South and Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean in our Global Business Division here at MBA. Her primary responsibility is to work with Mississippi businesses in trade and export promotion and provide international business assistance. Prior to her position in the International Trade Division, Rose was a Community Assistant Specialist in the Community Services Division here at MBA. Her position provided assistance to communities in strategic planning and problem solving. She's a graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi, and she holds a bachelor's degree in journalism and an MBA from Belhaven University. Rose is also a native of Peru in South America. She grew up in several countries in South America, including Venezuela, Colombia, and Chile. She moved to the United States in 1990 and has lived in Mississippi ever since. Rose lives in Madison, Mississippi, with her husband Tommy and their son Alex. Rose, let me just tell you, we had this poll. Are there people who have thought about doing products or services in another country? And I want you to know, about a third of our respondents have actually thought about that before today. About 67% of our respondents have not thought about it before today, but there are a lot of reasons all of a sudden for us to begin thinking about that. We know that a lot of the people who are listening today to this webinar have sort of thought, should I or should I not? Are there too many challenges, as Vicki said? Or what is there to gain? What kind of help is there for me? Perhaps it's because our economy is, for all businesses, is not as great as it should be. Sometimes we hear that when one geographic area is suffering, another is doing really well. And is that sort of true? And if it is true, and I'm thinking about moving to another country, Is there some systematic approach I can take? Is there some plan I should follow? Kelly, is there a way to help guide us there?
Good morning. Thank you, John. Actually, there is. There's always many different ways of doing it, but we're going to go over this morning a system that we have created for the small to medium-sized businesses that would ease the process of exporting. So let's get started. Here are some steps. And I'm going to go over each step, so just bear with me. I'm just going to mention them right now, and then we're going to take each of them and kind of give you examples and let you know how you can do each of them. But the first one is assessing the export potential of your firm. Okay, you need to make sure, first of all, that you do have some potential to export. So we need to go through a process, an in-depth process, to see if there is or not potential. The next step would be obtaining export counseling. And I will tell you, this is probably the most important step there is. You've got to get to the right person or persons to get this going. The next one is selecting the market. But you will get this through the export counseling. The next one is formulate an export strategy. The same thing. You will get this once you get with the experts. And the last one would be selecting a selling technique. You've got to have a strategy on how you're going to sell this overseas, just like you do domestically. Okay, so the first step is assessing your export potential. We need to, in order to start that, we need to look at industry trends. And I'm pretty sure when you started selling domestically, or you are thinking about selling domestically, you will do the same. You've got to look at the industry, and specifically at your industry sector, depending on what the product is, and see what the trends are, so you can go along with those trends. Then you're going to actually realize what your firm's position is in the industry. How well are you doing? If you're already doing domestic selling, how well are you doing? And I will tell you that in order to do that, in order to export, actually, you've got to have a solid position domestically. You cannot go overseas if you're not doing well domestically. So that's very important. And then if you do export, what are some of the effects on your present operations? How is that going to affect your capacity, your capability to operate if you do export? And then the next would be, of course, your firm's resources. What kind of resources do you have available right now, or could you have available in the future to export? Because I will tell you, you're going to need resources in order to do that. We all know in order to operate a business, you have to have resources, and the more the better. And then, of course, you need to anticipate the potential of your product or service overseas. You've got to know how you think you will do, how you anticipate that. Let's continue on with this in-depth examination. Okay, so also have to consider your business background. How well have you been doing? If you're already operating, you have been operating the last few years, how well have you been doing in the last few years? And then, what's your motivation for going global? Many times we get approached by businesses that are having a hard time domestically, and recently because of the recession. And they come and say, Rose, I'm ready to ship all my stuff anywhere that anybody can buy. Well, I'm thinking, you are in a reactive mode right now, which is not the best mode to be in to export. So you got to think about, is my motivation to actually be proactive, export, and stay in the international markets for a long term, to weather future domestic storms, or am I just doing it because I'm having a hard time and I just want to sell a few things and then get out of there? If that's your motivation, then I don't recommend you do export, because you really have to be committed. And that's actually the next step. You need to know, if this is your own business, you've got to be committed. If this is somebody else's business that you're running, you have to get a commitment from that person at top, or you won't get anywhere. And then, what's the strength and the unique characteristics that your product or service has to offer? Not only domestically, but mostly overseas. What kind of unique quality is your product going to have that you can offer? And the last step on this in-depth examination will be to assess the market's specific strengths. If you go into a certain market, what kind of strength does that market have for your product? Okay, so let's go into the next step, which is so, like I told you before, so crucial, obtaining the export counseling. Okay, I cannot emphasize this anymore. Research. The entire time you will be looking at the opportunity of exporting is going to be based on the research you do, and that's why it's so important. So where do I get this export counseling? Well, let's look at some agencies or some entities that can help you, where many times you would get started there, and then they will refer you, and eventually you get to the expert. But many times when you live in a small community, the first thing you think when you're going to export or when you're going to open a business or anytime you do anything is, oh, let me go to my local chamber. So you can start there or your economic development agency in your county or city, and they have access to what we do, the experts. And so many times they will refer you to a state agency that will do international trade, and that will lead you to us, and that's the state government. Actually, our office is in the Mississippi Development Authority, which is the economic agency for the state, and we house in the Global Business Division, and the office is called the International Trade Office. So we all have a region in the world, but we all can assist you in getting to where you need to get, what market, and if the product has potential and all that kind of stuff. So the other agency that is also very useful for when you're exploring exports is the federal government, and this is actually the U.S. Department of Commerce is the agency that you will be actually going to. They have an export assistance center here in Jackson, and they actually give you information on exports. And then product consulting firms, of course. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about briefly all the agencies. Of course, we have regional offices for MDA, the Export Assistance Center, we already mentioned, the Mississippi World Trade Center, and of course, SBA will give you also information on international trade. Okay, I'm going to mention this quickly, but it's very important that you actually focus on these people here. For you to export, you're going to need brokers. Okay, these people are going to sell you products. Okay, so you can go directly to the source, which is going to buy your product, or you can go through a broker if you don't want to go directly. And so many times these people would actually do a great job of marketing and selling your products overseas. Freight forwarders, for example, is very important because they're going to ship your product but also help you with the documentation that Vicki was mentioning before. That documentation has to be really accurate in order for you not to have to call the next person, which is an attorney, okay? So you do have to keep in mind there are international attorneys that will help you with international trade. That's something else you have to keep in mind. And of course, bankers, like Vicki said, getting paid is very, very crucial, especially when you're overseas, when you sell your product overseas, how are you going to get it back if they don't pay you? Once it crosses the border, it's there to stay. So you've got to think about, okay, do I need to get paid cash in advance? Maybe give credit once I've done my research, or maybe a letter of credit. So there's different ways of doing it, and a banker can recommend a way to do that. Okay, so the next step is selecting your markets. So it will take more research. Here are three markets you can keep in mind. The volume market, okay, is a market that is buying lots of what you're selling. A niche market, which is a market where you have such a unique product that it will sell well. And then emerging markets, those new markets, for example, like in Latin America, middle class is growing and therefore they're buying more stuff, and that will be a booming emerging market. So, but it will all depend on the type of product or service you have, okay? And it will also depend on the competition you might have in that market, and then what your objectives are to export. Okay, so the first question you need to ask is, what is the product or service? What is my product or service I'm gonna export? So you need to decide, is it a commodity or a high value added actually product, something that is going to have value and it's going to be very unique in that market. Okay, competing products. What kind of products in that market are going to be competing with your product? And if there are competition, if there is competition there, maybe you need to think about how it is that you're going to apply a unique characteristic or quality to your product to compete there. Applications and uses, what's the benefit of the product? The frequency of use, is this going to be used only during the Christmas holiday or all year long? For example, the shipping requirements. Recently, I had somebody that wanted to ship a product. He had actually shipped the product to Australia by vessel. He did fine. Well, we had to ship this sample actually to Chile, and it had to be done right away. He had to do it by plane. Well, shipping was very different, and the documentation and everything, the regulations to ship this product by plane was very different than one vessel. So you have to consider, okay, how am I going to ship this product, and what are the challenges I'm going to face? The installation is the product that I'm going to have to assemble, and then you're going to have to provide service or not. Am I going to have to train somebody in the other country to do this? And what are some of the standards, the rules, the regulations in the other country for the product that I'm going to sell? You might have to actually have a special license to sell this product over there. So all that is going to take research. And like I said before, we can help you through all the process, and Vicki mentioned it to you before too. And the last one is shelf life, okay? Is this a product that is going to have an expiration date or not? So you have to consider that when selecting the market. Okay, now the last question on this specific selected market step is who uses the product? Okay, here are some factors. For example, the economic situation or the finances of the person that is buying the product or whoever using the product, the geographic area, is this a product that is going to be for warm weather or cold weather? Sociological, for example, is this going to be something that can be used in that culture or not? Demographic, is this for male, female, younger audience and older audience? And then the purchasing habits. Do they have the same trends and purchasing habits as the U.S.? And if they don't, then you might have to do a little more research. And also, when you select the market, what market are you going to approach first? And that's something we can help you consider the market and then narrow down to the market based on these considerations and these factors. Economic, is the country stable enough? Are they going to a recession? Are they having a lot of inflation, etc.? Political stability, do they have a political stability where you can sell and get paid, because that goes hand in hand with the international trade, politics and international trade. Any barriers that you might have, customs, paperwork, etc., that you might need there. Cultural differences or similarities, and then the competition and the cost of you shipping this and selling this over there, your product. Okay, so one of the last steps would be to formulate an export strategy. So the first thing is you need to set some short and long-term goals. You need to know an objective. You need to know what you want to do with exporting. Is this something that's going to be for the long run or not? And then what kind of activities and tactics are you going to use to actually do your exporting? And then you have to allocate some resources for the activities. And I mean, unfortunately, money. You're going to need money to actually to do your exporting. You can just not have it and decide that you're going to have it after you sell over there. So resources is very important. The last step is how are you going to sell your product? How will you reach your customers? And this is very important. A lot of companies say, well, how am I going to sell this over there if I don't have any access to the market? I never travel there and so on. Well, one consideration that is key is to have local representation. And how do you get local representation? Well, you can do with the internet today, you can do a lot of the e-commerce and direct selling. You can find a distributor perhaps in the market. You can do all that through e-commerce. You can find an agent that will represent your product. Or if you grow later on, you can have a branch office in that country. Many times companies go through joint venture. They join a company over there and do it together. So you have an expert in the country and you can get the profits and the knowledge and expertise through that firm over there. Now, how are you going to do this? The promotion, the exposure and the marketing are very important. So you're going to need promotional materials. And you might have to start doing some trade shows domestically that have an international presence, but you can get to those international reps overseas.
Rose, you've given us a lot to think about today, but we have a poll that we would like our participants to take with us right now. On the screen, you'll see the question. And the question is, if I were to consider exporting my product or service, I would most want to know about, and there are 4 choices to choose from. Answer number 1, financial resources available to me. Answer number 2, marketing resources available to me. Answer number 3, who can help me through the process? And answer number 4, what countries should I look toward? Please answer those questions now. Rose, you've told us so many things in those 5 steps that we need to know. How can MDA actually help us through the process?
Okay, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. So here's some things that MDA can do for you. Consultation. We meet one-on-one with companies. Just pick up the phone, call us, or email us. We try to do as much traveling as we can around the state to different companies, but sometimes you need to also try to reach us and we get to you and start the process of assessing your potential for exporting. So we will consult one-on-one with the companies. We meet with them. We visit the facility. We get to know about your product and your needs. Research. We'll do all kind of research for you, like I said, to determine the market, to determine what the best strategy is, and the marketing, the promotion, and so on. We have foreign offices and reps overseas that can help us network and get to the answers you need. We do trade shows and expos that we sponsor, subsidize heavily for the companies, so you can join us and participate in these activities at almost no cost to you. We do business development missions and seminars, and all these activities are geared to work with you and your needs. Okay, so just quickly again, technical assistance. We help you with the paperwork, documentation, finding a price forward, finding a broker. We, again, meet one-on-one with you and do the market research. Also, we do, I mentioned the educational seminars that we do, and that's for you to learn a little more about the market and the process. We do lead dissemination. A lot of the times we come back from a show, we lead, and then we try to get to the companies in the city that have the product for the leads that we have asked to locate. We facilitate a lot of the different concepts that you need to have. We're talking about bankers, brokers, and attorneys and freight forwarders. We have a directory of all that for you to get to. And then protocol resources in case you have to do some kind of international protocol visit from a company or something that comes to your facility. So basically, we help you from A through Z. In the whole entire process, we actually hold your hand from beginning to end for the research prior to you doing anything. And then if you locate somebody to buy your product, we help you through that process as well. And if you travel there through our activities and come back, we also help post-trip. We give post-trip assistance to the companies if you need assistance with the language. Many times in my region, you're going to need to know a little bit of Spanish or to have somebody here or in your company that can communicate with that potential buyer. So here's the staff for the trade office. You can see each person has a geographical area. We also have, like I mentioned before, reps in other countries that can help us with the network and locating buyers for you and prospects. And here's our information, our telephone number, and our email and website. Please give us a call or email us. We'll be glad to walk you through the whole process and make it much easier and actually fun for you.
Well, that's awesome information, and we're glad that we have that website up there and telephone number so that people can contact you whenever they're ready to move into looking more seriously about exporting and doing international trade. Our poll question that we asked just a few minutes ago was, if I were to consider exporting my product or service, I would want to know what. And we gave 4 answers. The first answer was to know about financial resources that are available out there. And 32%, almost a third of our respondents today, were interested in that very topic. 20% said marketing resources that might be available to me. 28% were interested in knowing how someone can help them through the process. And you've explained that very well. And finally, answer number 4, what countries should I look toward? And 20% of our folks responded in that way. So, Vicki, I want to ask you this question. What are some of the recommended markets or countries that a small business or a business that's new to exporting, what countries or areas should they be looking toward?
Canada. The reason I say that is we have success in Canada for several reasons, and it's a good market for new-to-export companies to explore marketing and selling their product to. Obvious reasons. Close proximity and similar business practices, as well as the same language for the most part, which is English. So those are some 3 primary reasons why we would say let's explore Canada first. It prepares a company to do business internationally. Canada is not another U.S. state. It is a whole other country. With that being said, you get acclimated to how to prepare documentation, the labeling issues, the standards issues, the regulations issues. It acclimates a company to how international business is transacted, and it gets them comfortable because within Canada you have provinces and regional areas. Well, in each province, business is handled differently. So, with that being said, that's similar to when you do other international markets that are a little bit more challenging in terms of facilitating your product across seas. So what we do at in the Global Business Division International Trade Office is we always try to get our new-to-export companies to explore doing business in Canada for those reasons I just mentioned.
Excellent. Excellent. I would remind those people listening to the webinar this morning that if you have a question, please type it in on your screen at this time, and we'll try to answer as many as possible before we run out of time this morning. Rose, what we heard from the last poll was that nearly a third of the people listening to our webinar today are interested in some sort of financial incentive out there. What kind of financial assistance does MBA provide through our International Trade Office to small businesses that are thinking about exporting?
Okay, we actually, what we do for the companies is subsidies, heavily subsidize the events and activities that companies can actually participate in. For example, in November we're going to have, the example I'm going to give you applies for many industry sectors, not only for this specific one, but we have a trade show in Miami for the specialty food and beverage vendors and manufacturers here in Mississippi. And what we do, we sponsor a booth. We buy a large space for companies to share the booth with us. And as you know, if you have done trade shows are very expensive, thousands of dollars. We subsidize so heavily that companies can actually join and participate and share the booth with us at just a very reduced fee, a couple of $100, a few $100, instead of paying for their own booth with thousands of dollars out of pocket. So the subsidies is the best benefit and advantage that we have for small companies. And like I said, this is just an example for the specialty food, but we have many other industry sectors that have activities like that. So that is kind of like the financial assistance that we give through subsidies for the company. And the other financial assistance is the process that they're going to start from A through Z with us. All the consultation, the technical assistance, the research is at no cost to the company.
Excellent. Vicki, let me ask you this. How can I assess my product's potential, and who can assist me in knowing whether my product has potential for exporting?
Well, let me answer the latter part of that question first. We can assist Mississippi companies with getting research and potential for doing business internationally. And some of the avenues and methods that we would use is we would identify international markets that are growing and that are large and growing fast. We will look for consistent market growth and growth after the recession, especially now. Smaller markets, such as Canada, these markets will provide a ground floor opportunities to develop customer loyalty before your competitors enter your market. We will also assist in your competitive advantage based on what your goals are for doing business in those markets. So if you contact us, we'll be more than happy to sit down with you and go through and walk you through the steps for getting you ready to really do an assessment of your export potential.
Rose, let me ask you this. What is the very first thing that a business that's new into the exporting arena, what's the very first thing they need to know if they're interested in looking at international trade?
They need to seek the expertise of the experts, the counseling that I have talked about many times, and just to focus also on what Vicki just said, assistance from the experts to get that research going, because the research is going to indicate if you have potential or not, and if you're ready to export or not, and that research is going to come from the expert counseling.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Rose, and thank you, Vicki. This has been a pleasure for you joining us today. And thank you for listening into this webinar. Before you leave today's webinar, please take a moment to complete the session evaluation that will appear on your screen. And join us again this afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. for today's webinar on home-based business, when our guest, Dr. Brent Hales from the University of Southern Mississippi, will lead in our discussion of why 1 in 5 homes in the United States today are actively considering operating a business there. If you have not yet registered for this webinar, there is still time. Simply go to our webpage and register for the webinar, and then come back a little before 2 p.m. this afternoon. If you're interested in learning more about how the Entrepreneur Center at the Mississippi Development Authority can help your business to grow, please contact us using the information that is on your screen now. Our telephone number is 601-359-3593, and our email address is entrepreneurcenter.mississippi.org. A reminder to those of you who are attending today as part of our Entrepreneur Training Program, you will receive notice in the mail and through email of our upcoming July live training events in your area within the next few days. Make plans now to attend these live final training events where we will talk about the topic of financing your business. We'll be in Corinth on Wednesday, July the 6th. We'll be in Yazoo City on Wednesday, July the 13th. And we'll be in Woodville on Wednesday, July the 20th. Our final webinar in this series will take place on Wednesday, July the 27th. Our morning session will be on expanding your business, and our afternoon session on how to manage employees. Mark your calendars now to register for both of these sessions. You can do so easily by going to our webinar webpage at mississippi.org/webinars. We thank you for joining us today.